Welcome back to another recorded session of IRTA's Retiredside Chats. Joining me today is IRTA lobbyist Steve Beebe and IRTA past president and executive director Nancy Tolson. And actually, Nancy is responsible for Steve Beebe coming on board with IRTA. What year, Nancy, did you bring Steve on board? I was trying to think. 2012, yes. So that's how long Steve Beebe has been with us. Recently, the three of us had the pleasure of sitting down with our legislative committee and discussing things that have happened prior and what we would like to do moving forward. So I've asked Steve and Nancy to join me today so Steve can kind of share that discussion with our viewers, some of the things that we said to the legislative committee.
Okay, thank you very much. I was afraid that you were going to make this introduction something about a thorn between two roses. And I'm grateful that you didn't. And thank you for that. You know, before I talk about this upcoming legislative session, I just want to back up and make sure that we all realize just how much the legislature has done for retired teachers. For as long as I can remember and have been involved, every budget session, $1 billion has gone into the Pension Stabilization Fund to buy down the unfunded liability in the pre-96 fund, and to make sure that every retired teacher's pension, will be there for their, entire lifetime. In addition to that, just in this last special session, another $2 billion was directed to the Pension Stabilization Fund, to buy down, the unfunded liability. Let's not forget that the legislature did grant a 1% COLA, last budget session. And, that wasn't what we were, asking for, but it was, a significant amount of money that went to retired teachers. And, I have to remind myself that, for the first 3 or 4 years after Nancy hired me, we lobbied hard for a COLA. And, that lingers in legislators' minds. And I know when they passed the COLA 2 years ago, the thought was that was what we wanted. A lot of the legislators thought they were really doing something, good for us. And it was good. It was positive. But we had asked for the 13th check. So, there was some disappointment, I think, for us and our friends at IRTA, as well. Now, heading into 2023, legislative session, I've got a little bit of good news.
Okay. Just before we get off the past pensions, let me just say, I'm one of those pre-96 retirees, and when we were starting to think about that and hearing that there was an $11-12 billion unfunded liability, it was very worrisome. And then when they made that change in 96, it also helped us. And all the money that they've been putting in over these years is going right to helping make my pension stable. And we can't say that about every other state. Indiana's pensions, I think, are in much better shape than many states that we're hearing about.
Yeah, no question. The legislature has made a significant commitment, to make sure that your pension is safe.
Right.
And that's something that we should be thankful for.
Mm-hmm.
As we head into this session, 1st of September, I met with Senator Ryan Mishler, who chairs the Senate Appropriations Committee, And he was probably the one senator that was most responsible for the COLA in 2021. And he told me that he was not opposed to the concept of a 13 check, but he didn't want the funding to come from the general fund. And, to have him say that, I thought was a big step forward. He did not come out and say, yes, I will help you get a 13th check. But the door was left open as long as the money didn't come from the general fund. Now, fast forward to September 19th or whatever it was, when the PMOC committee met, and that's the Pension Management Oversight Committee. And, during that meeting, Steve Russo, who's the executive director of NPERS, made the presentation and said that there was enough money in the supplemental reserve account, which is not the general fund.
Right.
It's an account set up specifically to fund pension enhancements. There's enough money in that account to have a 13th check for the next 2 years. There's not enough for an increase, but there is enough for what I consider a regular 13th check. So I'm going into this legislative session with a lot more enthusiasm, a lot more optimism than maybe I had this time a year ago. So the session will start in January. It has to end by April 29th. This 13th check issue never gets decided until the very last minute when the budget is passed. But if we all work together, I do my job, retirees do their job, I think we've got a great shot at getting the 13th check this next session.
I'm glad you mentioned retirees doing their job, because one thing we're trying to share as we go out to local chapters, thanks to the work of Josie Savada, our communications director, and others here in the office, we now have on the website what we hope will become an easier way for you to stay informed and updated. So if you go to the dashboard at the top of the website, you see advocacy, you click on that, when it drops down, you see legislative updates, and we just added a summary that Nancy wrote after the legislative committee met that kind of summarizes what was said with the legislative committee. There's also where you can drop down and locate your legislator. Now, I've had some members call in and tell me, well, it's not 100% accurate. And that's not on us, because you are going to the indiana.gov website. But keep in mind, too, with the elections in November, there are going to be some changes. So besides looking there, you're going to just have to look at your local newspapers, and kind of make sure you do have the right legislator. But let's say you don't. Anybody you reach out to at this point in time is going to be positive for us, and to let them know what we've just said. We know they've done a lot for us with stabilizing our pensions. As Nancy said, she falls into that category, and I've mentioned before, my mother does. And our hope is retirees are living longer. So they're living longer. We want the pensions to last their lifetime. So we need to thank them for that. But then in turn, we need to let them know that it is really important to us, these pension enhancements, because our members rely on them. They count on them. And I agree with you, Steve. I'm much more excited that maybe all, the facts have come in and everything's there, and it says that we can have this funded for the next 2 years. I know that a lot of the phone calls we received in the last year and a half, I don't believe that the legislators purposely left us out in 2021 when they voted in the 1% COLA. I think they felt that was, for 2 years, this 1% COLA and on. It just didn't start in 21, so that was a disappointment. But if they vote in the 13th check, that is a guarantee for 23 and 24, correct? It
will be, but we have to make sure the legislation is written correctly. If it had the wrong dates on it,
Then that could be a problem.
it could be, a problem. But, no, we'll be watching for that kind of problem again, and we won't let it happen a second time.
I know we won't. So please look at the website. It's the best place to get updates, especially when we start in January, so you can kind of know what's going on. And I've already asked Nancy to kind of help me with maybe some suggestions of what they could put in their personal letters and emails to legislators, if they need a little help. But your personal touch will mean the most to them. I guarantee you that when you reach out to them. Nancy, anything else you can think of?
Well, I have a plea for all our educators, retired educators throughout the state or wherever you're living. Go to that website and find out how to get in touch with your legislator. We get questions quite often from our out-of-state members who don't really know, they haven't lived in Indiana for a while, but they're getting a pension from Indiana because they retired from here. So they can find on the website who their legislator is and write to that person. And I plead with you to write and get in touch with them before the legislative session begins in January. Right now is when they'll pay attention to it. They get so busy when the session starts, it's just frantic. And if you write to them now, get in contact with them now, they will pay much more attention. Thank them for what they have done for us over the years. I really feel they have done a great deal. Pardon me. Then tell them what a 13th check might mean to you. Be specific. Maybe it's going to help to pay higher gas bills this winter. Maybe it's going to help you with Christmas presents for great-grandchildren. Whatever you would use it for, they need to hear that specifically, because then they realize that that comes back into the community and actually is used over and over. That money that they give us in a 13th check usually goes back into the community and does more good. So there's a lot to rehash in this, and I hope we haven't confused you, but anything you want to add to what I said?
Well, I just want to really echo, what you said. The personal examples, I think are the things that resonate, with legislators. When you tell them, I need this money for medicine, or I need it for heating bills or Christmas presents, those are things that will stick in their mind, and I think has a much greater effect than just saying, please support the 13th check. And the other thing I always like to mention is that, at the state level in Indiana, if a legislator gets 5 letters, emails, phone calls in support of an issue, it has a great impact. I mean, we are not Washington, D.C. The legislature is much closer to the constituents that they represent. And, 4 or 5 genuine, emails can make a huge, difference in our efforts. So, just like Nancy said, when we, post information on the website that we need contacts to be made to legislators, we hope that you're comfortable following through.
Well, thank you both. And this is one reason why I wish eventually some of these Retiredside chats could be live, because you may have questions. And I just want to remind you, that's what the office staff is here for. You can call us, you can call and ask for assistance from me on how can I get communication out? What do I need to say if you're still a little bit confused? That's what we're here for. So I hope that you heard the message loud and clear. Start reaching out now. This is a very important time, and it will mean a lot to all of us come January 2023. Thank you for joining us today.